I was born Elise Constance Mayorana on November 15th, 1946. My mother told me that it was a beautiful fall day and she was thrilled to have me, her first child. Mom, Josephine Giaranto Mayorana, and Dad, Anthony Joseph Mayorana, had been married 7 years before I was born. She was 39 and he was 34. My mother had been a teacher, and my dad had worked for Con Edison from the time he was 15 until he died at 63. My sister Donna was born 14 months later. I never realized my mother was older than the other mothers in the neighborhood, since she taught me to somersault, swim, and gave me lifelong love for walking and roller skating. She also gave me love for reading, another lifelong gift. I was born in a Brooklyn hospital, but have been almost a lifelong Queensite. That aside, my love for water came from spending childhood Julys at Candlewood Lake in Connecticut and weekends at Long Beach. I was always the happiest there. While not all my childhood memories were perfect and peaceful, they were more than enough to compensate for the difficult times. I played piano since the age of 10, taking lessons with a teacher who taught at Juilliard until I was 17. This was another source of happiness for me. I was close to God as a child, and really believed I'd become a nun when I grew up. Somehow that didn't happen, but I've spent much of my life working on my relationship with God. That story is enough for a book of its own. My mother had 3 sisters and 2 brothers, all of whom lived within a few blocks of us. My grandmother had a love of fun, as did my mother. These are traits that I see passed down throughout the generations. From the maternal side, I had 9 cousins. My father had 2 sisters and 2 brothers, giving me 6 more cousins. My mother's side of the family was very close, and family gatherings happened almost weekly. Holiday tables were full to busting just with the 4 of us, plus my mother's family of origin. The original making of Easter bread in our family came from my own Nana, who made the big ones for the table and then individual ones for her grandchildren. I can see myself in her small apartment learning to knead the dough and then braid it. I didn't learn how to cook until after my mother died when I was 17, and my poor father suffered while I learned. Undergraduate years were hectic for me. As President Kennedy was assassinated when I was a freshman, my mother passed away suddenly the beginning of my sophomore year, and when I was a senior, I married your biological grandfather. Our marriage lasted only 7 years, and 5 years after that, in 1979, I met and married Julie Wager. My 2 daughters were my junior bridesmaids, and that day was one of the happiest for all of us. In 1981, we moved to a house in Flushing, and the years flew as I went for my first master's degree in regional planning. My girls went to high school and then college, and it seemed the house was always busy. I was then the executive director of the Queens Economic Development Corporation, working across the country revitalizing neighborhoods, doing entrepreneurial training for women in public housing, and building shopping centers. I sat on the boards of directors for agencies that worked with children and adolescents, which eventually led me to wanting to be a clinical social worker. In 1994, with everyone up and out, I went back for my Master's of Social Work at Adelphi. For me, school was then a luxury, as during the first master's, I worked full-time and cared for my family, but this time I was able to go to school full-time. So for the last 20 years or so, I have been providing therapeutic treatment primarily for children in foster care and women who are survivors of domestic violence. I've done some healing work with people who have suffered medical traumas, which was led by my husband's paralysis in 2000, and from what I saw and experienced from other patients the months he was in rehab at Mount Sinai. I am happy with my 3rd career and know that life is an evolution on all levels. I've been lucky to travel widely with friends who also get a wanderlust for it. This comes from my mother also, although she and my father didn't have the funds to do the kinds of traveling that I've done. I've seen Bali, Thailand, Laos, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Canada, much of South America, and lots of the United States. It's been an education that is unequaled. Regardless of my professional and academic work, my greatest achievements and joys have been my daughters and my 3 grandchildren, Sarah, David, and Adam. I've been a blessed lady. I wouldn't trade dance recitals, baseball games, or karate classes for anything.